Hey there guys, I'm Renee. I am the owner and artist behind Chicly Reclaimed Decor, and welcome back to another tutorial. Today I'm really excited to share with you these French country inspired Christmas ornaments, and I'm going to be sharing with you how I crafted them, layering texture, paint, IOD inlays, molds, and more to create these two distinct but beautiful designs. So if that is something you're interested in learning, stick around because that's what I will be going over today. But before we begin, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you can be notified when I upload new tutorials. And without any further ado, let's jump right in. Okay, so I'm going to take the top off of this bauble and I'm going to use the end of a paintbrush to insert in the bottom so I can more easily hang on to this while I'm painting it. And it's also easier for me to just put the paintbrush into a little cup so that way it can dry like that as well. I am just going to be using a 2-in-1 bonding and blocking primer. And I'm going to be using a makeup sponge, and I'm just dabbing this primer on gently. And I added 2 coats of this primer onto this plastic to prepare it to be painted. I followed that same process to prepare all of my ornaments, and then after they had time to dry, I am ready to move on to the next step. On some of these, I'm going to add some dimension to the design by adding some molds, and I'm going to be creating these using silicone molds and air dry paper clay. I'm going to dust my mold here. This is a cute little rabbit mold that I got from a small business off of Etsy. I dusted it with cornstarch, and I'm going to roll my paper clay into a ball, and then I'm going to go about the process of pushing this into the mold. As I've talked about in other tutorials, I'm using an air dry paper clay in particular simply because it's more lightweight than others. But if you have a DOS air dry clay or something similar, feel free to go ahead and use that. As you can see, I removed any excess, and now I'm just very gently loosening this mold from around the clay, and then I'm going to flip the mold over, knead the back, and remove my beautifully detailed mold. I made a bunny mold for each side, and I like to use Titebond Quick and Thick to glue them in place. But keep in mind before you glue anything down, the direction that your ornament is going to be hanging. That way you don't accidentally add your mold upside down. For this first set of ornaments, I wanted each one to be unique and different, but all of them to have that subtle French country inspired theme. But just keep in mind, these ornaments that I'm creating here today are simply for inspiration. With the variety of molds available on the market today, you can create your own one-of-a-kind bauble, or per se, you want a more simpler design, you can skip adding molds to your design altogether and move right on in to adding texture. As I said, for the next step, we're going to be adding texture in order to achieve an antiqued or aged paint look. To do this, I'm going to be using Embossing medium. This is a smooth acrylic plaster, and I am going to be using an artist texture brush to apply this product in a dabbing motion over the entirety of this ornament. As you can see, a little of this product goes a long way, and that dabbing motion here is creating these beautiful kind of variegated peaks of texture throughout. And this is how I applied the texture to the first set of ornaments that I created. But keep in mind, this is only one application. For the second set of ornaments, I will share with you a whole nother way that you can create a completely different look by just the application of this base layer. So be sure to stick around because we'll be going over that just a bit later in the video. Once my embossing medium has had time to dry, I'm ready to move on to the next step. I'm simply just going to be painting these ornaments this creamy off-white color, and this is a buttercream chalk style paint, again by Couture Paint. And again, I painted all of these ornaments with just one coat of this color before moving on to the next step. I'm going to be dry brushing using this beautiful rich gold color. This is Antique Gold, again by Paint Couture. And like I said, I'm going to be dry brushing, and I'm going to be doing this to bring out all that amazing texture and all of the details in these molds that we've added. As we've talked about many times before, the key to dry brushing here is to have minimal amount of paint on your paintbrush. So I had dipped my paintbrush into the paint and then I offloaded, meaning I just wiped off the majority of the paint onto this towel that you see below me before I went about gently brushing over top of this design. And my trick and tip that I have for you today in this tutorial when you are choosing a paintbrush for this technique is to choose one that has natural bristles. I personally prefer my little texture brush here, or just a cheap chip brush will do the trick. For the next step in these French Country Christmas inspired ornaments, we are going to be using these beautifully detailed paint inlays by Orchid Designs. This is the Petite Fleur, the red version, and I simply am just going to cut out these little designs that I want, and then we will move on from there. So these beautiful designs that you see are not a transfer, they're not decoupage, they're actual paint that you embed on your freshly painted item. My favorite way to apply these is to actually use a top coat instead of using a porous chalk style paint to add these to my item. So because these are going to be going onto kind of a rounded surface, I'm just going to rip the edges so that way I can get it to thoroughly stick to the surface. And I am going to lay my paint inlay, paint side up, spritz it with water, and then I'm going to take Paint Couture's Satin Top Coat. You can use a top coat of your choice. And I'm going to add a thick layer of this directly onto the area where I want to add this paint inlay. Remember, you want to add a nice thick amount here because this is the medium that this paint inlay is going to actually be embedded into. So once I have that down, I'm going to take my inlay and lay it paint side down directly where I have that top coat. And then I'm going to spritz it one more time with my water bottle. And then here I'm going to take a makeup sponge and I'm going to gently press it into place. After your inlays have had time to dry, about an hour or so, the trick to removing these is not to leave them on too long. You're going to come back through and again you're going to mist them with a water bottle, and then you are going to slowly pull the paper off, starting from one direction and pulling to the other. After you have removed the carrier paper and your inlay is embedded onto your design, the last and probably most important step in the process is to seal this paint inlay with a top coat. Now this is a very important step because these paint inlays utilize a very porous, water-based paint. So if you don't add a top coat over top, these inlays will remain activated by water. So if they get wet, they could smear. So we are going to use a top coat to seal not only the inlays, but this entire paint design on this Christmas ornament. And here is an up-close look at these beautiful designs that we created using a variety of molds, texture, and Orchid Designs paint inlays. Thanks so much for watching up to this point, guys. I hope you enjoyed the first half of this tutorial where I shared with you how to create this first set of Christmas ornaments. But stick around because for the second part, I'm going to be sharing with you how I crafted these absolutely beautiful and unique styled ornaments using, again, texture and layers of paint. Okay, so for these ornaments, we are going to, again, be using that embossing medium to create some texture. But instead of using a dabbing motion, this time we are just going to be brushing this product on in random motions. As you can see, there is no pattern to how I am applying this product. I'm using some up and down, some cross hatch, and even a little bit of dabbing, as you can see here and there, to create some great variegated texture on these ornament designs. Okay, so moving forward, again, after our embossing medium has had time to dry, I'm going to be painting these with a dark gray chalk style paint color. Now, when I'm painting here, I'm going for a very distressed look. So as you can see, I am only going to dip my paintbrush into my paint once, and I'm just going to use that amount of paint to paint this entire ornament. As you can see, my brush strokes are very random, up and down, side to side. And as I'm going along, some areas I'm dry brushing this gray color on, and other areas I'm adding it on very heavy. Here, again, as we talk about all the time, use your own artistic discretion. Next up, after this gray color has had time to dry, I'm going to come through and I'm going to do the exact same thing, but with the buttercream chalk style paint color instead. Okay, so up next, we are going to be, again, applying this antique gold color to this ornament, and we are going to be applying this in a dabbing motion. For this part of the project, I like to think of a globe of the earth, and as I'm dabbing this gold color on, I'm applying it as if it is the continents and land masses on that globe, spread out, connecting and then disconnecting over the entirety on this round surface. After that gold paint has had a little time to dry, I'm going to now come through and dry brush this antique gold color over the entirety of this ornament as well. And just as before, I sealed these ornaments when I was done with the satin top coat by Couture Paint. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Again, my name is Renee. I am the owner and artist behind Chicly Reclaimed Decor, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial where I shared with you how to create these beautiful French country inspired Christmas ornaments, where we layered texture, molds, IOD Paint Inlays, and more to create these beautiful and unique designs. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you're interested in more DIY content. And today, I hope I've inspired you to pick up a paintbrush and do a little creating of your very own.